what Donald Trump has been doing since day one of his presidency, running the largest pay-to-play scheme in the history of the country, and probably soliciting donations from people who've got business before the United States government. And all of this is going to have to be investigated. It will. And that's our warning to all of these people participating in this scheming to manipulate taxpayer dollars and, of course, to destroy the people's house.
All right, joining us now to try and make sense of the nonsense is the executive vice president of the Trump Organization and author of the New York Times #1 bestseller, Under Siege, Eric Trump. Eric, good to see you again. Congratulations on the book, by the way. That is amazing, and I want to talk about that. If Joe Biden were doing the exact same thing and he was paying for it himself, he'd be celebrated for being the first president to privately finance a major project at the White House, a major project. But when it's your father, it's now a pay-to-play scandal. What do you make of that?
Yeah, a massive pay-to-play scandal. I mean, he forgets about the fact that my father self-funded his first campaign. He forgets about the fact that my father donates his salary to charitable causes, right? The first president to ever do that. He forgot about the $400 million that we spent. I mean, so much of it I talk about in Under Siege, but $400 million we spent protecting ourselves from nonsense, sham accusations after accusations, whether it be the DAs or AGs, whether it be the Russia hoax or the dirty dossiers, whether it be the IRS leaking our tax returns or the debanking of our company. My father is a real estate developer, true and true. I've built more ballrooms, and my father has built more ballrooms than anybody. There's no one who will do it better than Donald J. Trump. I mean, I've used those very chandeliers that you see in the picture right there. We've literally used them before. This is going to be the most incredible gift that Donald Trump can give the United States. This is going to get massive amounts of use. By the way, from a security standpoint, this thing will actually pay for itself many times over, because every single time that they need to hold a function, either they have to put up that tent that you mentioned before in the intro, or they have to go off-site. You know how expensive it is to travel with the president, with obviously all the security apparatus and everything else, versus keeping it right there at the people's house where it should be. But again, Rob, this is free. My father's paying it for it. He's gone out and he's literally fundraised for it. How great is that? And by the way, there is no person who will build a more beautiful structure than Donald J. Trump. And I have to say, I've seen the plans for this many times. He sends them over because him and I, we've spent our entire career bouncing plans back and forth. Honey, what do you think about these bathrooms? What do you think about this ceiling detail? What would you do over here? And I can say I know the plan extraordinarily well. It is spectacular. This ballroom is going to be absolutely spectacular, and it's going to be something that serves this country for hundreds of years.
Does he call you honey?
He does, and he jokes about it. He goes, listen, my kids, they're in their 40s. My son Eric, he's 41 years old. No matter what, no matter how old they are, they'll always be honey, right? They'll always be my kids. They'll always be honey. And he always does.
Yes. Let me ask you. So I'm just curious about this. So again, I think you're what, a third generation? You've been in construction and building your family 3 generations, dating back to your grandfather,
That's right.
The president's father. Would there be a way? I guess there's no way to, if you're at the Hotel Washington roof deck looking down on the East Wing, you can take photos. But would there be a way to better sort of hide the worst parts of the construction and demolition? Because it was just, people could take photos at one point from street level, and it kind of fed into this whole thing that Donald Trump is taking a wrecking ball to the White House, which he's not.
Yeah. I mean, for everybody who knows the White House, I think you would admit you've been there 100 times. The East Wing was never exactly the epitome of the White House, right, to say the least. There's always the West Wing. It's always obviously the main building. It's not until people actually understand the White House they really understand kind of how it all plays together, and you might show it in a graphic here, but, obviously the center is the residence. Obviously, what you see on your left-hand side there, that's obviously the Oval Office, and that's where most of governments run. That's across from the Executive Office building. The East Wing was one of these things that was just totally underutilized. That ballroom is going to be absolutely spectacular. Listen, Rob, I don't think you could have shielded it. And by the way, nor do you want. When you start seeing these columns go up, when you see the superstructure go up, it's going to make people's jaws drop. And when you see the ornate ceiling detail, when you see the plaster molding, when you see the chandeliers, when you see the marble work in there, when you see the bathrooms and the details and the mirror details in that room, when you see these 3-story cased windows, vaulted windows,
right.
When you see the stone columns on the exterior, this is going to be one of the most spectacular ballrooms ever built in the world. No one else could pull off what Donald Trump is doing. No one else could build to this quality that he's building to. Again, this is something that's going to be revered for years, and it is something that's been wanted for years. And I'm telling you, as a person who's been by his side as he's designed this and had been part of that process, because it's what I do every day, and there's no one better at this stuff than I am than Donald Trump, I'm telling you, this is going to be one of the most magnificent structures ever built.
Yeah, and just the East Room holds 150 people. There were more people at my wedding. 150 is not a lot of people, and that's what they've been dealing with the White House for 200 years. And this is, I just thought this was interesting. So Gallup came out with a new poll today. Earlier this afternoon, the government voted to keep the government shut down again. I think it's like the 12th vote they've taken. But your father's approval rating went up by a point, meaning unlike the shutdown, the 35-day shutdown in 2018, the American people aren't blaming the president for this shutdown. What do you make of that? What's changed?
Well, it's hard to blame the president. I mean, listen, the Democrats, all they know is obstruction. That's all they've ever known. They're wrong on the policies, they're wrong on the issues, they're wrong on everything. DEI is dead. Wokeness has died. Everything that they've stood for the last 5 years is gone. Joe Biden was the worst president in the history of this country. Kamala was a sham candidate. I mean, she didn't even go through the formal process. She just kind of assumed the reins of this whole thing. The general public don't trust the Democrats. They don't like them. They like what my father is doing, right? And so you have all of that. And by the way, every single Republican, other than Rand Paul, who's kind of a libertarian, every single one of them is voting to open up government. I mean, even John Fetterman, a Democrat from Pennsylvania, is coming out and saying, how hypocritical are we? We've never, ever, ever voted against continuing resolution. Here, that's exactly what we're doing here. And then yet you hear these Democrats on TV, you hear that hot mic moment where she says, this is our only form of leverage to keep the government shut down. How about the hundreds of thousands of people that's hurting? How about, I mean, I could go through department after department.
Yeah,
They're crippling this country by doing it. All they need to do is say yes, as they urged my father to do so many times. But no, they realize that this is their only leverage because they're losing the game. And because of that, America understands exactly what it is, and they're just going to lose more voters, right? It's the law of unintended consequences. You're just going to lose more votes based on more senseless games that hurt this country.
Good to have you back. Congratulations, Eric Trump. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much, my friend.